Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to In the Office with Scott and Wallace. As a reminder, we're here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And this is about as early as we've gotten off the runway, I think, in the last couple weeks. So here we are with you at 2:10 p.m. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about a question, and it's a very generic question, but I think an important one, that we get all the time, and that is when
you should put up your Christmas decorations?
Yeah.
As you'll see, we've got our Christmas tree up. Robert is our resident Christmas elf, and he always has.
I can't take credit for this though. Our staff did all this on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So you weren't in the office; you were out in depositions, but we got the Christmas tree up.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're proud of that. So.
No,
what is the question?
All right. See how Clint likes to interrupt us? We had a nice flow going, and then you had to do that now. The question is, if I hire an attorney, or if I hire Scott and Wallace, do I have to go to court?
Okay.
Because that's a very intimidating place for a lot of people, obviously, and one of the reasons I think people hire lawyers is because they're scared to go to court. But one of the things we want to hit on is just because you hire a lawyer, you don't have to go to court. In fact, it's rare to go to court.
Right.
And so when you hire us, I'll talk a little bit about that. When you hire Scott and Wallace, one of the things that we do prior to filing any lawsuit or even contemplating filing a lawsuit is doing a complete investigation of the matter, which gives rise to you having to hire us in the first place, right? So if it's a car accident, we want to know a lot about the car accident. We want to know a lot about your injuries if you're injured in the car accident. And only after gathering all of this information can we make an informed decision with you, with your consent, about whether or not it makes sense to file a lawsuit. But most cases, as I said, do not wind up in the courthouse. Most are resolved amicably between the parties. But it is very important that you hire a lawyer to assist you if you have a matter giving rise to having to hire a lawyer. That you do that before trying to file a lawsuit yourself, because during that pre-suit process, you may be asked to make statements by the other side or an insurance company that could later be used against you, and that could serve the ultimate purpose, which is recovering a fair amount of money for you if that's in a personal injury case, for example. But Clint, when we do go to court, why don't you talk a little bit about what happens in a personal injury case?
So what generally happens is the parts that the client's going to be involved in are having their deposition taken, which is where the other attorney asks questions about everything that's happened in the medical treatment. There'll be a mediation, which is where there's an opportunity for the cases to talk about, or the parties to talk about settling their case. In a lot of cases, resolve themselves there. And then if neither one of those, or if the mediation is not successful, that's where we end up in trial. And typically, those are the parts that the client's going to be intimately involved in. We're handling all the rest of the part of the case.
Right. Okay, so. And even after a mediation, sometimes before trial, their settlement negotiations can continue.
Sure.
It's not uncommon that we settle cases, we call it on the doorsteps of the courthouse, right before the trial commences. Sometimes we've settled cases during the trial. So
sure.
We've settled cases after the jury verdict. So you can reach a settlement at any time, but as I mentioned earlier, most cases do resolve without ever filing a lawsuit or not having to go to court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Matt, will you talk a little bit about how the process works
in the employment side of things?
Yeah.
On the employment side of things, for age discrimination, race discrimination, claims like those, sexual harassment, some of the things that we work on here, there's a little bit more of a pre-suit process than there is for automobile accidents. For one instance, and I know I've talked about it before in the past, is most of those claims you have to file a charge of discrimination with either the federal agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the state agency, the Florida Commission on Human Relations. And it gives them time to investigate the claims and see if there's reasonable cause to believe some form of discrimination has happened. And with filing a charge of discrimination, there's a lot of timelines that come into play. So it is best to have the assistance of an attorney when you're doing that. For instance, you have 1 year to file a charge from the date the incidents have happened. And you might ask yourself, well, what if it's continuing conduct? Now, there are a lot of little variables that pop up in the cases that you need to be able to evaluate so you can know what to include in that charge. You have to include any form of discrimination that's taken place at the workplace in your charge. If you were to file a charge of discrimination and say, well, I was discriminated against because of my race, if when the lawsuit comes around you determine that, well, I also felt it was because of my gender, you won't be able to include that in your lawsuit because you didn't include it in your original EEOC charge. So there's more of a chance to resolve these lawsuits in the beginning for employment cases because there is that investigation that has to be conducted prior to any lawsuit taking place. So in addition to things that overlap with both of our practices, depositions being taken, mediation, working with the other side to try to settle a matter before it has to go to trial. It's a different process on the employment side of things, and still we're all in that same boat of most of these things will resolve themselves without the necessity of a lawsuit. It's just a little bit different given the time frames for employment matters.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned the EEOC charge. In our practice, we talk a lot about recorded statements or filling out paperwork for an insurance company. I think, one of the major pitfalls is it's not that you're trying to hide anything. You want to be as forthright as possible, but you can omit something.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may say something that's not, it's
Taken
not
out of context.
Yeah, it can be misconstrued, and so you want to have a lawyer who can make a representative statement, a third-party statement on your behalf. That's never going to come into a courtroom,
Right.
and make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, right?
Right.
So,
And there's time frames. If you don't do certain things in a certain amount of time, you can be forever barred from bringing a claim.
Exactly.
So it's an important part of it too.
So yes, to come full circle, when you hire Scott and Wallace, no, that does not mean you're automatically going to court. It's an important part of our practice. In fact, our ability to file a lawsuit and seek a recovery for a client is an important piece of the puzzle, and is, a lot of times is what makes the case settle.
Right.
But it is not a guarantee that if you hire a lawyer or hire us that you're going to wind up in the courtroom. So if you have any questions about a matter, a car accident claim, a potential discrimination or harassment issue, feel free to call us and we can discuss all the options available to you.
Right.
With that, are there any questions we need to address before we?
You don't have any questions. You got a lot of people watching, but no questions. You guys have covered a lot here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2 o'clock or 2:10.
Thanks, guys.
See you.